welcome to the stage Jake Braun, the Executive Director of the University of Chicago's Cyber Policy Initiative.
Hi, and thank you for letting me encroach on the female power hour. I didn't really realize that's when this was. I'm talking obviously about security in elections and security for your campaigns, as well as securing your election, whatever election you or your candidates might be running in. I don't know who here saw the New York Times this morning where the most recent Secretary of Homeland Security was told not to bring up election security or Russian interference in front of the president at all. So if you didn't know you were on your own already, you're on your own. So, you know, when I do events like this, whether I'm attending or speaking, I always kind of want to know, do I want to have this be an event where when I leave, I'm going to do something or know something or say something afterwards? Well, hopefully after this, you all will do something. There's several things I'm hoping you do. And so I'm going to go through four kind of aspects of that related to security in your elections. One is individually, what should you and the members of your team be doing for your own security? Secondly, organizationally, whether you're running a tiny city council race, you know, wherever, or whether you're running a national, you know, PAC, what should you be doing for your organization from a security perspective? Secondly, trying to figure out how to address maybe what might seem as the most mundane issue, which is workforce when it relates to cyber, but is maybe the most vexing out of all the cyber issues. And then finally, what to do to help ensure that the actual results of whatever election you're involved in are secure, because there's stuff that you personally can do. Okay, so individual. And I included this in the report that Genevieve and NewFounders is putting out, so you can write these down if you want, but they're in the report too. New York Times came up with these, so these aren't just some random list I came up with, and they got them from a bunch of cyber experts. So first off, having you and your team and everybody else who's working for you and with you download one of the secure texting apps. Signal, for example, is the one a lot of the hackers use. Wicker is built by multiple hackers. WhatsApp is pretty good. But downloading a secure texting app and forcing everybody to just use it as their default texting app and go from there. Nearly everything I'm going to tell you is free, and if it's not free, it's incredibly cheap. Secondly, and I'm going to put a caveat around this and tell you a quick story, but watch what, and you need to tell your staff, of course, to watch what links and PDFs and everything else they click on. If they don't recognize it, just ask, they should ask somebody, ask you, ask whoever, is this real or not? Okay, now that being said, some people I work with at NSA were trying to train like the senior most people in one of the armed services branches to not click on suspicious links and open PDFs that they don't recognize and so on. So after months and months of training with these people who, far more than anybody who works with any of us, should know about the threat that's out there and understand that the bad guys really are after us. Can anybody guess when they sent them a phishing attack that in the subject line said, "This is a phishing attack"? Can anybody guess what percentage of them clicked on the link? Who said 100? That was it, 100%. 100% of some of our senior-most military officials, less than a decade ago, after months of training, still clicked on 100% of the links. So that's all to say that, yes, you should tell your staff not to do this, and they should be very wary of it, but someone's always going to click on the link. Someone will always click on the link. And once one person clicks on the link, as we know from John Podesta, the bad guys are in. I'll come back to, I think, the only fail-safe for that issue in a moment. Okay, secondly, and again, this one I don't think is free necessarily, although there's free-ish models of it, but it's incredibly cheap to do. Again, back to what I'm going to tell you about in workforce in a minute, you will never have enough cybersecurity staff to secure all of your data, all of your memos and records and emails and your network in general. You might be able to hire a consultant to come in and tell you what's wrong with your system, maybe if you have a good amount of money, but you will not be able to hire somebody who's going to be with you from now until whenever your election or issue is that you're working on. And however, the people who do are the people at Amazon and Google and IBM and so on. And so migrating all of your data and your network to the extent you can to the cloud is potentially one of the safest, one of the best things you can do for you and your team's network. So that's to say, instead of leaving all of your polling and all of your lists of staffers and volunteers and everything else you can think of on somebody's laptop, put it in the Google Cloud, put it in the Amazon Cloud, put it somewhere where you've got big, huge companies with lots of money who can hire the best security people on the planet. Fourth, so it turns out that this thing we've all been doing for the last 20 years or so, where our passwords are like, an A is an @ symbol and exclamation marks for L's and all that type of stuff. Turns out that actually isn't the right way to do it. NIST, the National Center for Standards and Technology or whatever, says you should think of a really long password, like let's say 20 or 30 characters, something you can remember and therefore you don't have to write down, and use that, and including the spaces. And so, again, this is in the report. So longer passwords, just plain English letters, forget the numbers, forget the characters, forget all that type of stuff. I mean, the symbols, and just use plain English. And then I think we've all heard a million times, two-factor authentication, two-factor authentication, two-factor authentication. Okay, so that's what you should do as an individual, except for one other thing, and this isn't in the New York Times list, but we call it the New York Times rule. And this is what they taught us all as we were coming into work in the administration back in 2008 and 2009. It's, if you don't want it on the front page of the New York Times, then don't write it down. and that may be the hardest thing to train, especially young staffers. And it's not like, oh, only put it in your secure signal text, or only say mean, nasty things about people on WhatsApp, or only put out your, deepest, darkest, like most, Machiavellian ideas on, your signal text. No, don't write that stuff down. Pick up the phone, walk down to somebody's office, and if you want to have some dark Machiavellian conversation about how you're going to beat the opposition, then have it be a conversation, not a string of texts or emails, because that shit's going to get out. It is. It just is. And until you and your staff internalize, just don't write shit down that you don't want on the front page of the New York Times, you're not secure, no matter how buttoned up you or your organization is. Okay, so that's individual security. Network security. There is a list of 5 things that every organization should do. I'm not going to go through it in too much detail for you now. Again, it's in the report. Read the report. It's mandated. It's kept up to date by some of the top hackers and security professionals in the world, corporate America, NSA, the U.S. military, academia, all these other folks. Very simple things, like what assets are on your network, what software is on your network, do you have secure computer configurations, blah, blah, blah. It's all in there. Just hand it to your IT person and say, do this stuff. You don't need to come up with a new list. The best and the brightest have already come up with it. Okay, now here's the problem with that. Hand it to who? What IT person? Who is the person on your team you're going to hand this to who knows how to do it? Okay, so the Bernie campaign came up with a really interesting thing in 2016 where they didn't have enough money to hire every coder on the planet. They had lots of money, but they needed to hire more. So they started Coders for Bernie, right? And these are people who, for free, would sit there and help the Bernie campaign code and so on and so forth. We need to set up Hackers for Progressives or something like that where, and I know because I've worked with the largest hacker conference in the world, there are thousands and thousands of hackers and security professionals who would happily volunteer their time to help progressive candidates and causes. If you want to vet them, you can vet them, but think about all the other people who have access to your system that you don't vet. Maybe if they have a Russian accent, you might want to check them out or something, but when you do a call for volunteers, calling for security volunteers to help you is likely the only way you are ever going to get the security professional help that you need in a way that's affordable to you, because this stuff's really expensive. If you can get somebody, they're not going to stick around because everybody else on the planet's trying to hire them. So when you're asking for volunteers, ask for cyber volunteers as well. Finally, my last couple seconds. As I said with Secretary Nielsen, there is no whole of government approach to secure our elections. 5% of the paltry $383 million Congress appropriated to secure our election infrastructure has actually been spent. And by the way, that's by Democrats and Republicans. This isn't just Republicans who are screwing this up. Our own people aren't doing what they need to either. We are literally no more secure today than we were in 2016. And so you should go and ask the election official overseeing the election that you're trying to elect somebody to, what have you done since 2016 to secure our election? Show me the plan, and they should show it to you. I mean, you're trying to elect somebody in that district. They should show it to you. And if they don't show it to you, FOIA it. And if they don't respond to your FOIA, go to the press. The press will cover this, believe me. We get this covered all the time. If you scream that your local elections aren't being secured, the local press will cover that story. And force them to implement basic security. Take the security plan I just laid out for you guys, hand that to them if they don't know what to do, and say, just do this stuff, right? And then also they could do paper ballots and audits. So with that, I don't think I have time for questions. I think we're over. Do I have time for one question? One question. Anybody have a question? All right, yes. So in the report that Genevieve produced, by the way, thank you to Genevieve and NewFounders for this. There is a section that I wrote, and in that, it has the list of all the things that you should do individually and the things your network administrators should do. All right, great. Thank you all very much.